You'll see that Derek and John's screens are darked out. They're recused from this
Sure.
portion of the executive board's consideration, so that's why. And you are being recorded, so you know that.
Yep.
So welcome. You are running for the Rent Control Board, and can you tell us who you are and why you are running for the Rent Control Board?
Thank you, Mike, and good afternoon, everyone. Appreciate your time today. My name is Carolyn Torosis. I am a current Rent Control Board Commissioner on the Santa Monica Rent Control Board. Additionally, I'm the Director of Economic and Business Development for LA County, currently working to protect our workers and small businesses in the wake of the COVID-19 crisis. Why am I running? Serving on the Rent Control Board for the last 4 years has really been the privilege of my lifetime, to be able to represent the people of Santa Monica, specifically in this capacity. I care very much about affordable housing and access to housing, ensuring that everyone has a safe and habitable place to live. And I really truly believe that rent control protects the integrity and the diversity of our community. It's a pillar of who we are. So making sure that our rent control law has been enacted and also carried out fairly for both landlords and tenants, very important to me. I'd like to continue to do this good work. I think that there's much more to do, especially in light of the potential massive eviction crisis that we're about to see as we start to lift our eviction moratoria and recover from the COVID-19 pandemic. And then, of course, moreover, I want to make sure that we're fighting to keep Santa Monica affordable and actually make it even more affordable than it currently is, and protect our 70% of our population in Santa Monica that are renters, and also ensure that our landlords are entitled to their fair and reasonable return on their investment.
Great. Well, I'm going to start out with what this is the Democratic Club. So we have both tenants and landlords as members of this club, and a wide variety of positions. So you've indicated that you support Proposition 21. So can you explain what that would do and why you support it?
Sure. So I think that so Santa Monica is one of the original rent control jurisdictions. We originally had vacancy control, and I think everyone knows what that is, but in case you don't, meaning that the rents can only be incrementally increased even upon a tenant vacating a unit. With the passage of Costa-Hawkins and its subsequent inaction in Santa Monica around 1999, we've just seen rampant rental and actually property value increases throughout our city. For example, if you look at our annual reports from the Rent Control Board, we see about, on average, year-over-year increases of 5%, which is what for our rental prices, which is well above, our about, for example, this year around between 1% to 2% rent increases. So we've seen exponential increases in rent in Santa Monica, and I am a strong supporter of Proposition 21 because I think that it would, first of all, allow more local control throughout our entire state for other jurisdictions who would like to pass rent control or rent stabilization, but then also for us here in Santa Monica, we could explore return to vacancy control, and then also we could explore making buildings that were built after 1979 subject to rent control or rent stabilization. Proposition 21 makes it such that any building that's constructed 15 years or earlier, 15 years ago or earlier for human habitation would be able to be subject to rent stabilization or rent control. And I'm a strong supporter of that. I think that, as our rent control housing stock ages and new buildings are built, I don't think that that necessarily should preclude those buildings from being subject to rent stabilization. And if I just might add as a personal note, my parents are from Canada, from Montreal, Canada, and all of the buildings in Montreal are subject to rent stabilization, not just buildings built before 1979. I think there are many ways to make this work. And so I'm a strong supporter, and I'm on the record as having endorsed Proposition 21.
Amy, do you have a question you'd like to ask Carolyn?
Yes. Hi, Carolyn.
Hi.
I was reading through some of the things that you wrote up, and I thought you introduced an idea and was wondering where you kind of thought of this example or thought of this, and that is passing a vacancy tax to grow Santa Monica affordable housing, to increase the trust fund dollars and disincentivize disincentivize holding inherently affordable units off the market. Can you give me an example where this came from and how you could see it being exercised?
Sure. Thanks for that question. And I can't take all the credit for that. I think there's many jurisdictions throughout the state who have talked about something like this. San Francisco tried to pass an anti-speculation tax. And in Santa Monica, we see an increasing number of rent stabilized units that are held vacant in buildings where it's possible that the landlord wants to sell the building to a developer and deliver as many units, if not all of them, vacant. So what they will do is they will hold units off the market, and then there will be tenants in maybe 1, 2, or 3 units who are subject to increasing tenant harassment. And so I don't think that we should be. I'm not saying we necessarily penalize, but I do think that there should be some sort of tax levied if there are these units that could be subject to rent stabilization that are purposely held off the market. Additionally, we've seen after a building's been LS'd, units being held vacant for just over 5 years and then being returned to the market so that they can be reoffered at the market price. So I do think that we should capitalize on that. And if that is the landlord's choice to do so, why not make some additional revenue for our Affordable Housing Trust Fund? Hopefully that answered your question.
Mhm.
Okay.
You did. Sorry, I was just on mute. So, Carolyn, you are an incumbent. So what do you think you've been able to accomplish in your time on the rent control board? And what do you think, if the voters give you another term, you think you can accomplish for them?
Sure. So I'm really proud of the fact that we've done a number of reforms to our rent control, well, not our charter, but in a policymaking capacity. We've actually been able to reform the rent decrease petition process, especially in construction-related decreases. So that we can make sure that the rent decrease is going back to the time when a petition was first filed, and so that the tenant can avail themselves of that decrease from when the harm occurred. And additionally, I'm proud of the fact that we've worked with building and safety and code enforcement to make these what we call means and methods plans mandatory to include in any sort of tenant relocation plan for how that's going to be done, just because we've seen, again, rampant speculation, real estate speculation, and a lot of construction going on in and around our rent controlled units. We've also worked to cap pass-throughs from landlords to tenants, specifically in units where the property is turned over to a new landlord and the property taxes are reassessed. We were seeing long-term tenants be subject to hundreds of dollars a month surcharges over and above their rent increase for the maximum allowable rent. So we've worked to cap the amount for pass-throughs and then ban pass-throughs on any new tenancies because I believe that when a landlord is renting out a new unit at market rate, they should account for any of their property taxes, their expenses, as this is a business endeavor, in setting the new rent. I've also worked to spearhead a new initiative to completely overhaul our rent database system so that all of our petitions can be filed online. All of the records for each tenancy can be viewed online, more transparency and accountability for the agency, and then also an easier way for us to reach out to the public. Surprisingly enough, we didn't have a robust email listserv for all of our landlords and tenants, and so we are growing that. And I'm one of 2 commissioners who served on the technology subcommittee to spearhead that as well. In terms of what I believe we need to do in the next term, I've already alluded to the fact that I'm very concerned about the both demolition derby and mass wave of evictions that may or may not occur as a result of COVID-19. So I really think it's incumbent on us as a rent control board to pass strong protections to prevent tenant harassment, to try to help our tenants remain in their homes, and also work at the state level to treat any sort of past rent due as consumer debt rather than as the basis for an eviction. I'm very concerned that as we get into repayment plans here for our tenants who haven't been paying rent for the duration of COVID, that it's going to be very hard for them to keep up with their repayment plans. And I do not want to see our homeless crisis increase. I'm here to help decrease our homeless crisis. So we do not want to put people out on the streets without a place to live. Additionally, I think that I'm a strong, like I said, supporter of Proposition 21. I would, of course, be working to make sure that passes, and then hopefully that we enact real reforms in Santa Monica to our charter to avail ourselves of the new tools that we would have as a result of Proposition 21. And then I think that we still have more work to do with closing some of these corporate loopholes for furnished rentals. Although the Rent Control Board did, and I'm proud that we banned any rental of units to non-natural persons. I think from a citywide basis, we still have more work to do with our short-term rentals and our corporate rentals. And I think working with City Council to ensure that we're enforcing any of these new ordinances in our rent controlled building, in our rent controlled units, is something that's very important to me, and I look forward to working on that as well.
So to our members, I apologize. This next question, which I think is actually an important one, I didn't think of in time to ask the other candidate we've interviewed so far for this position. But so you, as the Rent Control Board, you have your own staff and the like. What either has the Rent Control Board or what will the Rent Control Board, if you're reelected, be doing to look at whether diversity in terms of its hiring meets the needs of the day that at least has been brought home, should have been brought home to all of us before, but maybe is more brought home today, particularly with Black employees, but all diversity.
Absolutely. And this is something that I talk with with my team at work all the time. How do we promote equity in the way that we deliver our services, but also within our organization? It's not just about who you're hiring in your organization. It's also like, are we really putting forward equitable services? And so we don't collect demographic information currently on the people that we serve who come to the rent agency asking questions. Although several months ago, I actually asked staff for an equity study because I do want to look at who's coming into the board and who are we helping and how are we making them better off? What's the impact in the community across all both socioeconomic and ethnic groups? Additionally, in terms of the equity among our hiring practices and the like, well, I think we are probably going to be hiring in the next term. This is something actually that's very important. Not only a new general counsel who has announced his retirement, but most likely our executive administrator as well. And these are the two highest level positions within the agency. It's really important that we have strong people in those positions who are committed to serving the mission of the board and ensuring that our rent control charter is fairly enacted and enforced. And so I would commit to you to promoting equity at all levels of the organization, in addition to the equity study with how we look at service delivery, making sure we're looking at our hiring practices. I know that the city council is also looking at potentially changing this rule of, I think they call it in the city the rule of 3, but at the county we call it the rule of 5. There are some very antiquated government hiring practices that need to be kept carefully looked at and probably changed so that we can promote greater equity within and diversity within our organization.
So since I've seen you, for example, at some of the conventions and the like, I know you're an active Democrat. Could you talk a little bit about what you've done in connection with the club and more generally in the Democratic Party?
Sure. So I definitely try to come to every single Santa Monica Democratic Club meeting, when I can. I love coming, and I just have to say your current leadership, and especially John, I know he's recused, but has just done a tremendous job of kind of bringing the Santa Monica Democratic Club to prominence in the community. And I think people really look to this club for leadership. I've been an activist all my life since before I turned 18. I've always been a Democrat. And when my husband and I decided to live permanently in Santa Monica, really tried to get first involved in our local community, but then also involved in our Democratic Party. So I'm proud to say that I'm an elected delegate to the California Democratic Party. I'm also an alternate member of the LA County Democratic Party, just having been appointed to both the Labor Subcommittee as well as the Judicial Appointment Subcommittee. And then I am also an appointed member of the platform committee of the California Democratic Party. So working across all of our Democrats, both rural and urban, to ensure that we have a platform that is, sufficiently broad, encompasses our ideals, and works for all Democrats. I am here to listen and learn when I can. I don't, supposed to know everything, but I think that having an open mind and hearing divergent viewpoints is really important. And then going out and electing good people who are going to enact good policy, extremely important to me as someone who works in government. I've seen firsthand what happens when someone knows how to make policy that actually works versus someone who doesn't. So I think that it's really important to me to always advocate for our candidates who we think are going to be espousing the values that we believe in.
Great. So unless there are any other questions from any of my colleagues here, Ed.
Hi, Carolyn.
Hi, Ed.
Hi. Quick question. Do you think it's wise governance for the rent control board to have subpoena power?
It would depend on what context, right? So if we were given delegated authority from the city council, and I think I've talked about this a little bit, to carry forward investigations or to enforce certain elements of the city charter that the rent control board doesn't necessarily have the authority to enforce or investigate, I do think that subpoena power would be necessary as an extension of whatever the city attorney was doing, as they have that power. So again, it would depend on what context this was in.
Right. So the answer to your question is yes, you can do it legally if the city decides to do it. And two, it would be a good thing, not an overreach of government power by the rent control board.
Again, it would have to be a limited scope. I can't say that we should have a subpoena power in all circumstances. I will tell you that we already have an investigations department. We sit in a quasi-judicial capacity and we hear administrative cases on appeal. And I think as part of that, we need to be able to have like the full breadth of information to make these decisions, because these, again, we're not just here as an advisory body, we're here as a judicial body, but it would depend on exactly what authority we were delegated also by the city council, and what types of cases we were looking at. I think a limited scope subpoena power that was very clear would not be an overreach.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Anybody else? Great. Well, thank you so much for your time.
No problem. That's it. You guys you don't have more questions for me? Okay.
We have a lot of other
I know. Thank you guys so much. Appreciate you and see you soon. Bye.